everybody, Ty here. Hope everyone's doing well. So, in this one, of course, we're on the lookout for severe weather today. We mentioned this in pretty good detail yesterday, but there is a slight risk that's popped up over towards the Mississippi Delta. As of right now, there are no watches and warnings towards the area. Thunderstorm activity has increased notably. You can see by the lightning on the screen here. We'll go ahead and put this in a loop to go along with it. But nothing on the radar right now that's looking very threatening. It's a very messy convective mode. So as far as severe weather is concerned right now in the short term, I'm not too worried. That can change a little bit later into the evening, but there are a lot of inhibiting factors with this setup that I think we may not be able to quite overcome them. If we were to, though, if you look towards the bottom left corner of the screen here, you can see that we do have a 5% tornado risk and a 15% wind threat to go with it. So the threat is there, but it's very much a conditional threat. And some factors would almost, I would go as far as to say, is maybe would have to overperform right now. As we get a little bit later into the evening, I still think that it would be possible. Wouldn't surprise me if we got a couple of odd wind reports and a couple tornado reports. But again, it's kind of an uphill battle to get severe weather as of right now, at the very least. Now, if we were to go ahead and take a look at the temperatures to go along with this, as we've been talking about on the channel for a while here, quite a notable warming trend that we've been on. These are temperatures over the last 20 to 24 hours, I would say. And as you can see, we're getting into the 50s and 60s across the deep south here. Those 50s are even starting to work their way into the northern states here. So very nice treat to have over here in comparison to what we've had in previous time this month. So good way to close out the month for the most part. We aren't going to really be worrying too much in the way of winter weather in the short term here. Now, as we go into the month of February, things get a little bit more topsy-turvy here. The storm track definitely looks like it kind of favors more the northern states before all is said and done here. So I think as we get towards the middle part of the month here, we may see a little bit of an increase in activity there. This doesn't really come off to me as a setup right now that would be favorable for severe weather towards the deep south right now, which would most likely be the point of interest if we were to get any. But right now, off of first looks here, I'm not too concerned with that. The interesting thing to make note of here, we're going to take Euro off the screen here for a bit. We're going to be taking a look at the temperatures now from this point, and we're going to mainly be focusing on the GFS because these models are in pretty good agreement at this juncture right now. Of course, the warming trend is going to continue for at least the first week of February. We do get a point in time here where we get those colder temperatures to make a little bit of an advance here. Up towards the northwest was where the coldest temperatures exist right now. We even have some 10 below zero temperatures over here towards the far reaches of the Rockies here, especially towards the northern states like Idaho and Montana here. Eventually, though, as we move forward, this area starts to warm up ever so slightly. But I do wonder as we get further towards the back half of the month, and we'll kind of verify this more over the course of the next couple of days, as to whether or not we may end up having another cold snap. Like I've been saying before, I do think February has the potential to be one of those wild card months, very dynamic, where at times we could be dealing with some cold snaps sprinkled in here and there. But I predominantly think that we'll be above average for a large part of the southeastern U.S. The northern states is a bit of a question mark right now. Towards the northwest is where I would have the highest confidence of those below average temperatures being pretty much throughout the month. Just how significant in comparison to average is still the question, I would say, at this juncture. Now, let's go ahead and go over to the precipitation outlook here. And this is where my interest kind of peaks a little bit more, simply due to the fact that we have a lot of action going on towards those northern states, as I've mentioned before. With the storm track being where it is, it does lead me to wonder what to expect there. And then also towards the northwest, things are going to get very busy, especially as we move further and further into February. We'll go with the GFS first here, obviously. Now we're going to, of course, watch this storm system move out. And then interesting scenario kind of pops up over here as we head into Friday night into Saturday. We start to see the potential for some snowfall over here towards the interior part of New England here, and even heading into Maine as we head into this weekend. And the same can really be said for the Euro as well. although not quite as prominent of a look in comparison to the GFS at this point. I mean, if you compare the two model runs, we're on the exact same time frame here. It's 39 hours out. Just look at the difference. Now we'll watch this move out, and then this is where our attention starts to shift over towards the mountainous northwest here, where we're starting to at times get some pretty heavy snowfall, especially over towards the Sierras as we move forward. We're going to move this to about 84 hours out, make our comparison with the Euro here, and it looks relatively similar for the most part, but there's a little bit more of a shallow layer of warm air here in this case. So we might see a little bit more in the way of rain if the Euro scenario plays out. But as we look more towards the mountainous northwest, though, really strong mid-level cyclone pops up. Surface low is at 1,000 millibars at this point too. So some pretty strong wintry system pops up here. Eventually even starts to stretch its way past the Rockies into the northern states, especially towards the Dakotas at this point. So heavy snowfall could be possible with that as well. We'll continue to move this forward here. And this is where we start to get a little bit of variance within the models here. There's a good signal here over towards the Sierras here, which is great news for them. Very below average here as far as precipitation is concerned for the region. So it's good to see them getting a bit of action here. But it does look like we get a stronger or a more notable moisture shield over here towards the northwest, especially heading over towards the Dakotas once again. GFS, it takes a little bit longer for that to develop, but once it does, we end up being a bit more consistent as we go forward. All while in the meanwhile, out towards the Midwest here, there's a little bit of an early signal for maybe a little bit of ice. It doesn't look like a super organized ice system, but something that we'll have to keep an eye on. Now as this progresses further off to the east though, I do have some increasing concerns there. Does look like for the most part we start out as ice though and we'll end out as rain, which might be a saving grace. The Euro kind of has a very similar look at this point, but then again the ice shield is a little bit further to the north as well, and this will be of course towards the end of this upcoming week here. So by this point it'll be next Thursday morning where we start to see some ice. We'll shift over into rain as we get into the early afternoon, so anything that falls at this point based off the current scenarios, it's going to end up melting most likely, which is really the best case scenario. Not too many people really like ice. I'm definitely not one. As we go further along here, weather pattern kind of levels off a little bit. We do have a little bit of a cold snap coming in. Again, this is what I was kind of mentioning before, where I was saying that the potential is there for us to have a dynamic month where, well, we could be well above average at times, especially towards the deep south here, but we still have these little cold snaps sneak in here and there. And it's really once we get a little bit further out towards no man's land, as I like to call it, once we get to that 270-hour range and beyond here, where we're starting to see some more notable wintry systems here. Not surprising given some of the first looks that I took towards February, but there is a bit of model disagreement to go along with this. By the time we get towards 294 on the Euro in comparison to the GFS, this is a storm that seems like it manifests itself a little bit faster on the Euro, but really doesn't get its act together until we get towards the 11th. But by that point, this is 1,000 millibar low that's well into Canada at this point, and this will limit the snowfall totals, with the exception, of course, lake effect snow, which is going to be a key factor. Because with that upcoming cold blast, regardless of which scenario plays out, lake effect snow is going to still be a factor at this point. Now, interesting scenario pops up once we get towards 348 hours. Looks like we have enough of a warming trend to where we could get a consolidated line of storms over here towards the Ohio Valley over here in parts of the Midwest. This could even be a potential cold core setup, which would be pretty interesting. However, I'm a little bit skeptical of that setup. Also, I do think that there will be some big time wraparound snow on the backside of this system to go with it. But in stark comparison, look at what the Euro has for us here. Up towards the Appalachians here, this could be some big time snow, but mostly we're going to be dealing with cold rain here at this point. So, like I said, a lot of big changes here as we get towards the middle part of February. So, a lot of model disagreement, a lot to keep an eye on before all is said and done. Last thing we'll do, of course, is look over towards the very end of the GFS first, and then kind of wrap up the Euro from this juncture here. And like as you can see, a lot of model disagreement, except for out towards the northwest. Northwest really seems like the bullseye at this point, and especially over towards the Sierra Nevadas with the GFS. I would expect, based off of the whole entire 14 to 16 day run here, we could get at least a good several feet of snow here. Very much needed for the region, especially towards the Sierras. And then also, we've seen a decent bit of activity over towards southern parts of California where we're getting rain. I am slightly concerned about debris flow still, but hopefully this will help get the wildfire situation a little bit better under control. Maybe a little bit more containment would be possible at this point. But as far as the mid-range is concerned, things are going to get pretty interesting here. So make sure you buckle your seatbelts, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next one. Till then, take care and have an awesome rest of your Thursday.